There are some seeds that are absolutely perfect for sowing this month. And yes, I know it's still cold outside, but this is all about smart, well-timed sowings. Get this wrong and your seedlings could well just keel over and die, but get it right and you'll gain precious weeks on the growing season. So let's get started with one of my firm favourites I just have to grow every year. And that's lettuce. And you really can sow lettuce right now. Now, lettuce doesn't mind it particularly cool, but it won't appreciate being heavily frosted hard repeatedly. So the key to getting lettuce started at this time of year is just a little bit of protection from extreme cold. Now that could be a greenhouse, a cold frame, even indoors, a hoop house or polytunnel, anything just to protect from the very worst of that cold. That's our potting mix here, nicely sieved or screened, and you can see the woody bits left behind here, which I can just add to my greenhouse beds. Now, throughout all of today's sowings, I'm going to be using just an all-purpose potting mix, or multi-purpose compost is what it's also called. And I put it through a sieve there just to give a finer texture for sowing. It's not necessary for bigger seeds like, say, beans and squash, but for smaller ones like lettuce, I'd say it kind of really helps just to get everything in scale. And to sow, I'm just going to sow them all into one pot. This is about, 3.5 or 9 centimetres wide or something. I'm going to sow them quite thinly across the top. So in I go with the slightest sort of pinch of seeds like that over the surface. And then because lettuce seeds like a little bit of light to germinate, I'm just going to cover them over with the merest suggestion of our fine potting mix here, just enough so they go just out of view. And that's it done. Now I've just got to label them and give them a bit of a water. Now I'm in a relatively mild climate here, the equivalent of about zone 8 or so. So while we still will get frosts later on in the winter, there won't be those really hard penetrating ones that last for multiple days. So this makes it a perfect time of year to start many of these hardy crops. I'm going to leave these out here to germinate, but if you are in a much colder climate, you might want to bring your seeds indoors to germinate on a kind of warmish windowsill. Then they can always come back outside once they have germinated. And choose varieties bred for cooler conditions, because these will be better able to withstand the cold at this time of year. The trick now will be to keep the potting mix lightly moist but not overly wet and sopping, because that's a surefire way to lose lettuce seedlings. They'll succumb to problems like damping off disease. Then once the seedlings have popped up, I will carefully transfer or prick out the seedlings into their own plugs, and they'll be grown on and planted out in another 2 or 3 weeks on from that. And they will go out about 10 inches or 25 centimetres apart in both directions. And now for something I look forward to every early spring, pea shoots. Peas sow now are truly fabuloso for lovely sweet and crunchy shoots, and they germinate surprisingly quickly, giving a lovely crop within a couple of weeks. Pea shoots aren't just for garnishing your meals, lovely as that is. They are the darling, the sweetheart, in fact the all-round crown winner of any salad or stir-fry. Yes, please. Today I am sowing a variety sold specifically for pea shoots, but if you've got lots of old peas that you're not entirely sure whether they're fully viable or not, then sowing them for pea shoots is a great way to make use of them without sort of having any wastage whatsoever. Now today I am using this old mushroom crate. It's a really good kind of size, it's quite shallow. Any kind of wide shallow tray will work well because they won't be rooting that deeply. And because this has got holes in the sides, I'm just lining it with newspaper first of all. So for this I haven't bothered screening or sieving it because pea seeds are that much bigger, so they'll be fine in this kind of raw compost or multi-purpose potting mix here. I just rubbed it between my hands to get the biggest lumps a bit smoother. And here we go, the seeds. I love sowing pea seeds like this. It's so kind of satisfying because you can really, get hold of them and get all tactile with them. And I'm just going to try and spread them so they are about, very roughly, 1 inch or 2 or 3 centimetres apart. Now obviously that would be incredibly close if they were growing in the ground to full maturity, but because we're cutting them young just as pea shoots, this is absolutely fine and should give each plant all the space it needs to give us those lovely shoots. Now I've sown them and I'm going to cover them over to a depth of about 1/2 inch or 1 centimetre. These now need to go somewhere nice and bright, and just here on the greenhouse bench is absolutely perfect. You could bring them indoors to germinate, just in the warm to speed things along a bit and then bring them straight out here once they have, but out here is just fine. Now peas and pea shoots don't need it particularly warm to get going, and they grow pretty fast even in cool weather. So depending on what the weather does, these could be ready to harvest within just 3 to 5 weeks. And to harvest, I'll just snip them off once they reach about 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimetres high. And if I harvest with care by cutting them just above a leaf node, they should regrow for a second cut. Or alternatively, just sow another tray in a few weeks' time to keep those pea shoots coming. If you're desperate to grow something edible right now, well, pea shoots are brilliant for this. They are one of the fastest crops to grow at this chillier time of year. Radishes are another incredibly satisfying crop to sow at this time of year, and also really quick growing. And in fact, these will be some of the first pickings that you will get from outside. And what I will be sowing today is this beautifully white-tipped radish called French breakfast, a very popular variety, but it has got me thinking, do the French actually eat radishes for breakfast? Let's find out. Do the French eat radishes for breakfast? No, they don't apparently. The name comes from the Victorian English, who served them for breakfast as a homage to their French origin, not because French people eat them at that meal. They were served with sort of butter and salt. Well, there you go. That solves that mystery. I love them anyway, whether for breakfast or indeed normal salads. Radishes are a great contender for sowing directly into the soil where they are to grow, but by sowing them in late winter into plug trays like this, it gives me a little bit of a head start, as much as a couple of weeks. And if it turns a bit milder, I could be harvesting these roots within just kind of 5 to 6 weeks. To make sowing indoors and then transplanting the seedlings outside worth my effort, I'm going to do what's called multi-sowing. That's simply sowing more than one seed into each plug here. Now in this case, I'm going to aim for very roughly 5 seeds into each little plug like that, with ambition of getting 4 to 5 little seedlings to then grow on. And they will be planted out just as they are, a cluster of seedlings about 6 inches or 15 centimetres apart in each direction there. Now sowing early in the season like this, up to about mid-spring, is actually quite a smart move. And that's because radishes have a nasty tendency to bolt, which is when they flower prematurely before they've produced a usable root. And they do that when it gets really quite warm and hot, or the day length increases. So this kind of avoids that and ensures we can get a good crop of roots before that kind of danger period. Now would you just look at that, they're all beautifully sown. I love the way you get those lovely pale seeds against the dark potting mix. It's just so satisfying. Now radishes don't need it particularly warm or any background heat to get growing, so they'll be fine just kept out here to start them off. And I'm just going to cover them with a little bit more of that potting mix now, and then give them a water, and then they'll be away. At this cooler, slightly slower growing time of year, I would expect to plant out my radish seedlings maybe 2 to 3 weeks after they have popped up. Now it can still be decidedly chilly even then, so a little bit of cold protection in the form of a row cover of fleece or perhaps a temporary cold frame will really help your radish seedlings make that transition. Make regular sowings of radishes, say every 2 to 3 weeks, and you will enjoy a steady stream of roots rather than a glut all at once. And it's a good job these guys do grow relatively quickly, because I can hardly wait to tuck into them. I love slicing them paper thin with a mandolin to pep up my salads, or making a refrigerator pickle with them by covering sliced radishes with a warm solution of vinegar, water, salt and sugar, and then storing them in the fridge. They don't last as long as traditionally preserved pickles, but they don't need to because they'll be eaten in next to no time, because honestly they are that good. Next up, spinach. Tough as old boots when it comes to the cold, but with a lovely soft and tender side, beautiful texture, and of course full of goodness. I want to get more greens into my life, and spinach is a great way to do it. Spinach is also perfect for a late winter sowing because it actively prefers slightly cooler conditions. It tends to bolt in the heat of summer with those long days. So by sowing now to get a bit of an early start, we're going to enjoy a longer period of harvest. More of those luscious leaves for salads, stir fries, smoothies and the like. And you can always actually cut and freeze spinach to enjoy during the heat of summer when plants will be bolted. And again, I'm sowing into plug trays, but this time I'm just going to sow 2 seeds per plug to grow on either as 1 or 2 seedlings. It doesn't really matter which. Now, spinach, although it is fine with the cold, won't really stand having its roots in really wet, cold ground. So by sowing into plug trays, not only do I get a slightly earlier start, I can also keep a beady eye on them to make sure that the potting mix is just so moist but not soppingly wet. And then these will be grown on here in the greenhouse, or a cold frame will do. And just for full disclosure, I never actually heat this greenhouse because honestly, who can afford to do that with the current energy costs? If winters are really cold where you are, then I would either delay sowing spinach by another few weeks or start them off indoors and then gradually acclimatise them to outdoor conditions once they are up by bringing them outside for increasingly longer. Or, as well, choose a variety suited to colder conditions such as Giant Winter, what I'm sowing today, Medania. This really does tip the advantage in your favour and ups the chances of a successful harvest. The young plants will be planted out into their final growing positions in early spring, and they'll go about 8 inches or 20 centimetres apart in both directions. Now do remember that young baby spinach is a real delicacy, so do be sure to harvest the leaves as soon as they reach a desirable size in your opinion, and just take 2 or 3 leaves from each plant at a time so that the others can grow on for the next harvest. Now then, can you guess what's in this mystery pack here for our next vegetable? That's right, beets or beetroot. Now towards the end of the month, and by that I mean late February, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, late August, is the perfect time to begin sowing beets or beetroot, and you could go a little bit earlier if things are a bit milder where you are. These beautiful, earthly, richly coloured roots are just delicious, but they do not like being disturbed when they're planted. So growing them in plugs so you can just pop them out from the bottom and then plant them with minimal disturbance is the way to go. Each seed is in fact a seed cluster capable of producing more than one seedling. And that doesn't really matter because just like our radishes, we're going to be multi-sowing these guys to give a cluster of seedlings to plant out exactly as they are. Multi-sowing feels like a bit of a cheat code because by planting out little seedlings as a cluster rather than individually, you're actually saving a lot of time and effort. And it also helps with harvesting by spreading them out. And that's because by taking the largest plants, removing them once they're ready, then the remainder, the smaller ones, then have the space to grow on for the next harvest, spreading things out beautifully. Nice. This time I'm aiming for around about 4 seeds per plug, which should result in around 4 to 6 seedlings, all being well. Now, these will grow fine out here, but if you are in somewhere with much colder kind of winters, then I would consider starting them off indoors and then bringing them out here. But this early start, well, that means we get our beet roots that much sooner. And I really think there's nothing better than either roasted beetroot or a beetroot salad. Oh, just delish. Now what I've sown today is a bolt resistant variety called Boltardy. You get lots of fancy varieties out there, but I always come back to Boltardy because in my honest opinion, it is absolutely the tastiest as well. Once these have grown on a bit, I'm going to plant them outside about 1 foot or 30 centimetres apart in both directions. Now, by the way, all of what I sowed last month, from onions to chili peppers, can also be sown this month. So if you are looking for more ideas of what to sow now, do check out that video next, which I'll link to in the description below and also at the end of the video in a bit. Now then, let me show you these fava or broad beans. They look all right from that kind of side, don't they? But if I turn them round, you can see that there's a bit of frost damage here. What's happened is I sowed these a little bit too early, it transpires. They've grown quite long and fleshy like this, making them vulnerable to the cold. We've had a nice cold snap with deep penetrating frosts, which has been really nice to see really, but my fava beans have thought less of that. So I'm going to sow some more. These might be okay, but I'm just going to sow some more to be on the safe side. And in fact, late winter is a really good time to sow because they'll grow quite slowly. You'll get those lovely stubby little seedlings and they're much less likely to get damaged by frosts when we get some more. Fava or broad beans are incredibly good for our mental health. It's been scientifically proven, and if you would like to watch our video about all the benefit of this incredible bean, I will link to our recent video on that down below. Now you can see the beans that I sowed in the autumn to my left, your right, were sown in these long kind of root trainers, which encourages a nice long root. You could also use something like toilet roll tubes. I'm just going to sow into these rather generous plugs here. I'm going to sow 2 beans into each one. These ones here, I just had 1, but I think this is a good kind of compromise. And I'm going to aim for a depth of at least 1 inch, but up to 2 inches deep or 45 centimetres, something like that. And as I say, pop in 2 seeds per plug, this size. Sowing now will give me sturdy young plants to set out about 8 inches or 20 centimetres apart each way in another month or so. Now these are going to stay out here in an unheated greenhouse, so cold frame would work well as well. And this will just protect them from mice and slugs, which find tender young beans an absolute 5-star dining experience. Now, they shouldn't get too much interest in here, but what I might do just to be on the safe side is pop these into a kind of plastic clear kind of tub with the lid firmly clipped on, and that way I can keep them well away from any mice or shrews or whatever until they are indeed up. But if mice aren't a problem in your area and it's perhaps a tad warmer and not too soggy wet here, you can just sow your fava or broad beans directly at those final spacings. Once you're done, what I like to do is actually pop an impromptu kind of cover over the top. That will hide them a bit from the mice, but more importantly, stop it, if it's really wet, from getting really soggy down here. And for that, I just use these old window panes here, which rather conveniently match the width of this bed here. Then once the seedlings are up and touching against the panes here, I can just remove them to let them grow on. Some varieties are better suited to early sowing than others, so please be sure to choose one that fits the bill. Now, if you thought these beans were starchy and stodgy, well, please do check out that video I mentioned earlier about these wonderful beans, because there are some truly tempting and outrageously delicious ways to enjoy them. Sowing outdoors directly really starts to gather pace in a few weeks' time. In the meantime, it's great to be able to sow at least something. There's so much optimism and joy about the coming growing season. I'll catch you next time.